We were supposed to talk about on the live. We were supposed to talk about the Section 8, and we were supposed to talk about the housing choice program. And Miss Gina is a little bit under the weather. Otherwise, I was going to have her talk about evictions, and I was going to have Rahul talk about Section 8. So, having said that, we're going to get started. You're listening to Burr Cash Flow Investors. And the whole point of doing these lives is we want to kind of talk about different topics that are related to investing and how you can invest better. And this is kind of one of those free sessions where it's not mastery, but then some of the things that we would cover in mastery, we want to kind of just bring you a little bit of a highlight, a little bit of pieces that we can kind of cover in a half an hour period. So we do these on Mondays, Wednesdays, and on Fridays. So today, I think it would be fun to have a discussion on the housing choice voucher program. So having said that, I'm going to give the mic to Rahul, and then no, but he's a little bit softer on the voice. So Rahul, you want to grab the mic, and then I'll kind of start with some of the questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sure.
Hold it. Just hold it low.
Just hold it.
You don't need to hold it near.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So basically, what we're going to kind of talk about is, how about we do this, right? We kind of set up the structure of what is Section 8. A lot of people have heard about Section 8 program. So Section 8 is basically a assistance program for people with a income which is at a threshold and below. And the basic way that the program works, and there's a lot of Section 8 programs. A lot of times people don't realize that City of Chicago has a different program. Then there is each county has different programs. Sometimes each town or village will have different types of their programs, and they're run in different ways. But the general rules of that will apply to the discussion that we have today. So hopefully that makes sense. So number one, let's start with some of the basics, and I want to kind of get a few things out of the way. One thing is that in Cook County, if you live in Cook County, and this applies to Cook County only, they had a rule that was passed that you as a landlord cannot discriminate against source of income in terms of whether you're going to take a housing choice voucher tenant or whether you're not. So that is something important to keep in mind. So what does that mean in practical use? In practical use, what that means is that you're going to give everybody a fair shot, right? That's all that it means, is that that you're not going to discriminate. You're not going to say, oh my God, Rahul is taller than Andrew, so I'm going to give my rental to the taller guy than to the shorter dude, right? I mean, that kind of thing. Right. Understand, that's, so it's called, the way they do that is it's called source of income. So now, Rahul, I want to kind of start over there, right? That generally of a lot of properties between you and I, in a partnership, we have 100 plus properties we own, right? In that, how do you look at a property to decide whether I'm going to do Section 8 or whether I'm not going to do Section 8 or housing choice voucher program? How do you decide that?
No, again, it's as you said, it's an equal opportunity, right? So when you put the property on the market, you just have to give chance to everyone. But what it tends to happen in general is some of the areas are housing people are coming a lot in some certain areas because of they attract because of higher rents are given by the housing program. So you'll get higher leads in some areas versus in the nicer areas. So the way these programs work, as Andrew was explaining, is based on like somebody who has a low income, so they are taking care of the housing or their housing needs or housing bills. The nicer areas, when I say nicer, is like where the taxes are high, schools are good. There are different demographic of people, so you will find less people there. So it depends on where the location of your house is, and how you get the leads from
so
the
let's
outside.
just say, like, if you're looking at an area like Schaumburg, Naperville, let's say, right, versus you look at I would say it's a C area or B minus area, depending on who you are. You may categorize it differently. Hazelcrest, right? So in Naperville, in Schaumburg, what happens is property price is high. Your taxes relatively not are not as high, but because the property price is high, your taxes are going to be higher, right? But in those areas, the challenge what happens is, let's say you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch, right? And you have a market tenant, so we'll call the regular renter versus a housing choice voucher program. A lot of times your market tenants will be able to pay the rate. So hypothetically, let's say you're charging $2,900, right, for your rent. So now the question is that, hey, I open it up to everybody. I can't discriminate, obviously, and I hope you don't, right? That you don't discriminate, but you're going to have let's say a housing choice voucher program participant come in and say, hey, my housing choice voucher will only pay $2,600, right? Now, you as the landlord have the choice whether to say, am I going to go down on my rent to $2,600? You don't have to. Nobody can force you to go down on your rent. But this is kind of what happens. Whereas if you go to, say, Hazelcrest, your normal rent, your normal market tenant may be willing to pay, say, $2,000. But for a 4-2, your housing choice voucher may pay $2,400 or $2,500 in that particular area. So in that particular area, you come out ahead. Is that correct?
So basically, in those areas, they are almost like a market rent. So now you don't have to. The way I look at when I'm renting is you're putting everybody on the same scale. So you're comparing everything on the same parameters or same filters. So if they cannot afford 29, like he said, on the Naperville area or the A areas, you don't want to go down, because then you're going to lose money on your property. So it doesn't make a right decision or a business decision for you as a landlord to take that 2,600. But at the same time, if you go to some C or challenging area, and that's where they are giving more money, because people have needs in those areas because they don't get that many resources. So the housing program works for those people in that area because they need those programs. So they're actually paying higher as compared to some other areas, and it works. So that's how you can get those people in that area, and actually you can make money as a landlord.
So the first place to start, right, would be a very simple thing, and this is accessible to everybody, is go to Cook County Housing Choice Voucher, right? Which you can look this up, and this is public information. And I would go there, and what I would do is I would download their sheet. There's a sheet. Do you remember the name of that thing?
So the website is the HACC, the Housing Authority Cook County.org. So if you go on that and just search for the payment standards or payment schedule,
Yeah.
and it has a PDF there, which it is per zip code. They have a different pricing, and it's on those charts, and they keep changing maybe around 6 months to a year. As the index changes, they update those prices.
So over there, you're going to have A, B, C, D, E, F, G kind of thing, right? And what happens is they're going to have zip codes, A zip code, B zip code, C zip code 3. And based on the category A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they're going to have a payment, right? So in the EFG kind of thing, your payment is going to be higher. So a 3-bedroom in A zip codes, right, may not have the same payments as in D zip codes, or and you'll see that they pay higher for certain zip codes. Now, you would think that, oh my God, in a nicer area, they would pay more in terms of rent. And that's not the case, right? Which is kind of very interesting, that you would think that in a more expensive area, they should be paying more. But that doesn't work that way. A lot of times you'll have an area where you can buy a house for, say, $110,000, fix it for another $30,000. So you're in the deal for $130,000, $140,000, and the property's worth $200,000, and you're getting $2,500, $2,600 in rent, right? Park Forest, that happens to be the case. Parts of Dalton, you get on a 4-2, you get very high rent. So you have to do that kind of math and see which areas am I getting really good rent, and I'm not paying that much for the property. So that becomes a great deal for you as a landlord to be able to maximize your kind of the delta between what you're paying for the property versus what you get.
So I think the way the algorithm algorithm works there is based on the income and index. So as the income goes down, their payment goes up, and I think that's how from the nicer areas versus not that nicer area, the payments are different. So like he said, the chart is from A to Z. As you go from A to Z, the amount they are giving for any property is higher and higher. So if your zip codes are in the later part of the chart, which are anywhere from like U, V, W, X, Y, Z, there's a $2,600 up to that number for 3 bedroom is supported in those areas. Versus on A or B side, it might be only 1,600, 1,700. So that's why you need to check. Okay, where is your property? What zip codes you have? And based on that, you can decide whether that makes sense for you, because you have your principal interest, or you're paying your mortgage, you're paying insurance, paying taxes. So you are paying the fixed cost on your end, and you need to make money. So if that calculation works, then obviously yes, you can say you can take Section 8 housing people on your side.
So before people start, and this is important when you look at this chart. So I'm going to kind of just pose some rhetorical questions. That way, Rahul can cover some of those topics, right? So let's say I have a tenant that has a voucher for 2,800, 2,850, right? And I have a 3 bedroom, and they have a 4 bedroom voucher. So just because they have a 4 bedroom voucher, will they give me the same amount of money for a 3 bedroom house?
No. If you have 4 bedroom and a guy and the person who's coming in has a 3 bedroom voucher, they can only give 3 bedroom rate as per the chart. So if the 3 bedroom is 2,400 versus 4 bedroom is 2,800, they will base the rent based on 2,400, which is 3 bedroom, because the person's voucher is 3 bedroom.
Okay. If I have a 3 bedroom house and I have 1 bedroom in the basement, right? Will they give me 4 bedroom credit?
Yeah, as long as the bedroom is it all goes back to your inspection. So they are going to inspect the house, and as long as they say it is a livable space, so you need to have an exit window, you need to have a closet in there. As long as it is a livable area as per the building laws, it should be fine.
Okay. So what he said is livable. So what does that mean by livable, right? Section 8 will do a inspection by a Section 8 approved inspector. And at that point, for those of you that are watching from actually Mastery, there was a lady that we did this particular section with. So go and watch that, because we have it in the Mastery thing. There's a bunch of people that watch these that are from Mastery. So you can get access to that, and so that you'll get to get all the information that we had done specifically on the subject in detail. So a livable space will mean, number one, is it finished, right? Do they consider it finished space? Number two, does it have an egress window, right? It needs to either have an egress window in the bedroom, meaning you can get out in case of fire or whatever. Does it have a closet, right? So there are certain criteria they consider, even if it's below grade. If you have walkout basement, that may work, but they have to call it 3 bedrooms on the main level, another bedroom on the basement level. That'll qualify as long as it meets the standards.
Yeah, and I think it's a 70 square feet.
70 square feet. Okay.
That's a dimension at least. So it should be at least, I don't know
7 by
how
10.
you can live in a 10 by 7 or 7 by 10 area, but that's the minimum requirement of a bedroom.
Generally, a bedroom is 9 by 10, 10 by 10,
Right.
or 10 by 11 is a general bedroom, just to give you guys an idea. So that's number one. So let's just say whenever you have a property, right? So first thing you're going to look at, okay, is this area going to support a Section 8 tenant that meets my rent, right? Of course, if your rent is a certain amount, just because you have a Section 8 tenant, you don't have to give them the property. Now, for a Section 8 tenant, same thing as a regular tenant. For a regular tenant, you're going to do a credit check. You're going to run them through the
screening process.
Yeah. Are the screening process for a Section 8 tenant versus a regular tenant the same?
Screening process is the same. The analyzing might be different, because they are getting the Section 8 because their credit score must be low. Okay. Or they have less income, or they have some problems. So you cannot base it on the credit score in that case, because if you're accepting that, it's already given that their credit is going to be low. But on the market end, obviously you want that, because you want to make sure that they are they have enough income and they can support that rent. So that's the only difference on
So the
on a
income-
financial side
Right.
only.
So you look at the financial side for a market rent. For a market tenant, you're gonna look at, okay, what is my basis? Maybe I take 33%. 33% of their gross income, right? Whatever the criteria you use. What is the criteria you?
So we are using like a 3 times gross income. So if my rent is 2,000, I want to see my tenants making at least 6,000 gross income per month as a family,
Okay,
or more.
as a family. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're going to look at that for a market tenant, but for a tenant which is a housing tenant, you're not going to look at that, because for the housing tenant, you're basically guaranteed full or partial amount coming from the housing, whatever that particular housing voucher is, right? In
Yeah.
Chicago, it may be CHA. In DuPage County, it may be somebody different. So it just depends on which authority it's coming from. So you're going to look at that. Now, besides that, as far as, let's just say they say, well, I have 3 dogs or 4 dogs, right? I mean, I'm just making it up,
Yeah.
right? Would you treat them any differently
No.
for the 2 tenants?
No, other than that, like I said, finance is the only one factor. Otherwise, it's all same. Like how many people they have means you have enough rooms for enough people or not, pets or no pets, any other things, any other requirements from their side should be equally.
So basically, you have to be equal for everybody. You can't say, oh my God, you're a market tenant, so I'm going to treat you this way. You have a housing voucher program, I'm going to treat you this way. So we tend to have generally 2 to 3 year leases
Yeah.
on most of the properties, right? So a housing choice voucher program may not allow, right? Not may not allow.
They
they're
don't
not
allow,
going to
yeah,
allow
right.
to sign a 2 or 3 year lease,
Right.
right? So, and this is important to understand that if that's the standard that you have for everybody, then you got to hold that standard, right? So that, hey, for a month, I'm going to advertise for 2 year
Year
lease
minimum.
After that, I may lower the standard and say I'm going to allow a year lease, but then you have to do that for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. You can't be discriminatory based on if you're a housing choice voucher or you're not. That's the biggest criteria that you have to keep in mind, that it has to be equal for everybody.
Yeah, because for housing, it's going to be 1 year. So
Right.
first lease is going to be 1 year, and after that, it's a month to month. It's not they will inspect the property at the end of the year to make sure property is still in same shape and everything is safe and as per regulations. And it goes month by month. Then you can give people notice if you want to take them out, or for whatever reason, if you're selling the property and you want the property vacant. After 1 year, you can just do, and the process is same, like on that side, eviction or on the or vacating the property, the process should be similar.
Process should be okay. Good. So let's just say that for a Section 8 tenant, right, is the entire amount of rent, is that always paid by the housing choice voucher, or sometimes they pay a certain amount and the housing choice voucher pays a certain amount?
Every program is different, but in large, if somebody is making some money, if they have income, then they are paying 30% of their income towards the housing. So if they're making $1,000 a month, then that 330 or whatever will go as their portion towards the total rent, and then the rest of the portion will be paid by the county, or the program. If they don't make any income, or their income is below whatever, I don't know exact limit where the
Cutoff.
lowest cutoff is, then everything is paid by the housing program.
Okay, so it's going to basically be driven by their income. Now, if their income changes during the course, I don't know how frequently they update that, but they have to basically, the county program or the city or the village program that they have, they monitor that. And I don't know if it's with their W-2s, how they do it, but they do monitor that. So that can change during the
Right.
time. And in your experience, right now, you've owned properties since 2011. So since 2011, if I was to say overall, how would you rate your experience with housing voucher? 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, with the quality of tenants. Where would you rate that?
I'll be somewhere in between. It's a mixed bag.
Okay.
Like some people really need that voucher and they value that voucher, and those are the people you want. People who really care for that voucher, so they'll keep the house clean, all the inspections, there will be no problems, and those people will be there forever. Like they won't leave your property if you keep the property right. Um, but there are some problems with some people. I think they have more issues in their life, and now I have evicted people because they stopped their portion of the thing, and obviously housing will pay until they are there, but they are just sometimes a trouble making people.
Yeah, and the eviction process is the same.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times, what people think, and in fact, I used to have this wrong impression at one point that if the tenant damages your place, let's just say, right, and it's a housing tenant, then I can go to the housing voucher provider, if whether it's county, whether it's the city program, and say, hey, the tenant, they're not. All they're doing is they're providing. So the lady we had for this, the specialist who specializes in this, what she says is, Andrew, you got to think about this. Somebody works at McDonald's and they're your tenant, and they're a manager of McDonald's, they're your tenant. So you can't go to McDonald's and say, hey, one of your employees is damaging my property, right? So it's the same exact thing with the housing voucher, that they're not going to go and they can't police the tenant. That's not how it works. But if, let's just say, the tenant owes you $1,000, right? Every month they're responsible for paying $100 in portion, and now they want to move from your property, and you can prove that, hey, legitimately they have not paid you. At that point, if you complain to the housing voucher authority, then they can force the tenant to say, hey, no, you are not going to get your moving packet unless you resolve this particular situation. And the eviction is going to be like a regular eviction, right? So it's not going to be any easier or any harder. It's going to be like a regular eviction that you have to go through if it comes to that, right? In general, we have had a pretty positive interaction with the, and it gets a bad rap sometimes because of certain people. But just understand, just because somebody has a voucher, you cannot just go ahead and give them housing because, oh my God, it's guaranteed, because they may take a terrible toll. So you have to be equal in terms of doing your homework, in terms of doing your screening, but you want to make sure that they're going to be the quality tenant that you want. The only thing that is going to be different is that the source of income is going to be different, right?
So like from last few years, like our portfolio, we don't have that many housing anymore. Initial part, when we had properties in certain areas, so we had more housing, but in last few years we kind of changed to market rent. But through the COVID times, like a lot of our other people who had properties in areas which are heavily populated by the housing, they were actually were very they got all their money, right? So housing was paying throughout the COVID years, so it was actually blessing in that side. So there's always a plus to everything, but it all comes down to your screening. It all comes down, you screen your tenant as you screen your market tenant. I, like, for example, I always ask, if I'm taking a housing person, I ask them the photos of the previous place, how they kept the previous place, or if I can go, or somebody I can send, we'll send somebody to just look at how they're living in the other property, because then that tells you if somebody's leaving a property and if they're keeping it nice, that means they're careful. That means they're responsible people. So it all comes down to that screening. If you get the right people, housing will be the best tenant you get.
Yeah, and this is what we have experienced when we have, a property on Grove, and I'll never forget this lady.
Yeah.
Right? Did she move out of that property?
Oh yeah.
Oh, she did.
Yeah,
Okay.
finally.
Because finally, right? But she was there at least
10
6,
years.
7 years.
No,
10
almost
years.
10 years.
Right? Almost 10 years in this property, and she was the one who would call. She was one of those tenants that was a little bit more maintenance, but she cared about the property. Right? She cared about the property. She's like, oh, the neighbor. I mean, my guy who lives upstairs, he didn't do XYZ, right? She was kind of the police for that. It's a 3-unit building. And so sometimes you get wonderful people, right? Because there is a bad rap sometimes with, oh my God, it's a housing voucher, so a tenant has to be bad. That is not the case, right? But you have to do your screening properly, right? That is the biggest thing that we would say about Section 8. Now, the nice thing is with them that at the beginning of every month, boom, right? Your rent will hit, as long as your building is in certain condition, right? And if you have any issues, you can reach out to the housing providers, and they will basically make sure that your tenant is doing their part, right? And that is sometimes, even I've at times had this thing, oh my God, they're just abusive, this or that, and that is not the case, right? So you just have to kind of, rather than just lumping everybody in one bucket, you have to just understand that it's like anybody else. There are tenants who are respectful, they're good, you're glad to have them, and then there are other tenants that are just not so good. So that's kind of the mixed bag that you're going to get, and it's 100% dependent on your screening methods.
Yes.
If you're strict, you'll do well with it. If you're not, you won't do well with it. Now, generally, before somebody moves in, they have to have something called a
moving packet.
A moving packet.
Yeah.
So how does that work, and what is the tenant's responsibility and what is the landlord's responsibility?
So when you list your property, you're not. I mean, there are some sites where you can list your property for housing, but but it's not from the landlord. The tenant has to reach out to you saying that, okay, I have a moving packet of 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, and I'm ready to move, and then you can accept that tenant. Now, part of that, there's a lot of information about the tenant himself, like what where that person is coming from, or what package they have, how many dependents they have. But in the packet, there are some certain documents for the landlord, mainly your ACH form, like where the money should come. Then you have to provide your EIN number if your company, or if it's on your own name, it's a social security. So they are looking for the IRS documents because they are sending you money. And then obviously your lease, you have to present a lease. Okay, this is our. So Section 8 doesn't have a special lease. It's your lease is always the same, always the one they are going to use it. And then the property deed, so that you own the property. So that's the part of you have to provide. And then a proper description where you provide it's a 3 bedroom, it's a 2 bedroom, 2 bath, has a car garage, because that form which you fill out, they will determine the rent based on the information you are providing. Because the rents on that chart, which we talked about, that rental chart, that is the maximum they can pay. So in the area, like for example, there are properties are $300,000 plus, some properties are 250. The rent is up to that number. If your property is the highest price or highest value or square feet, you'll get that maximum. So that sheet which you're providing has all that information: how much square feet is there, what you pay and what tenant pay, like all the utilities and all the all the
Water,
bills, electrical,
right.
and all that. And then obviously they are asking you the comms too. They're asking, okay, you're asking this $3,000 rent. Is it justifiable? Is there anything in the market which is actually 3,000? So that's your part. So you fill out all that
So
packet.
basically, they're going to bring you a packet, right? Now they give you the packet, and in that, the most important thing is, number one, ACH form. Number two is that
W-9.
you own a W-9, and that you own the property. They
deed.
want a deed. They want to make sure. So let's just say, hypothetically, you have a company called ABC LLC, right? But then you want to get your payment in Andrew Holmes' bank account. Guess what? They're going to have a problem with that. Why? Because they're like, hey, Andrew Holmes is not the same as ABC LLC. You're like, no, but I own it. They don't care, right? They're like, hey, no, that's not how it. And the reason why it is because clearly people commit fraud. So they want to make sure that they're paying the property owner and that the money is going in the property owner's account. That's what they want. They're very sensitive about that. So everything has to match what is on the deed, where you're collecting rent, how the lease is signed, all of it. And it's very simple. It's not like it's difficult. Initially, the paperwork seems a little tedious. Once you fill it out, actually a couple times, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Initially people don't fill it out properly, then they have problems. So once you fill that packet out, now, and the other thing that's important is, let's just say the rent says, okay, it's 3,000 in this area. Your house is let's say a 3.2, right? The 3,000 is the gross rent. What does that mean? That means that rent includes offset for utilities in there. Yeah. So their gas, their two or three of the utilities in there are included. So Section 8 may determine that, hey, for this particular property, the offset is going to be $250 for utilities. So then, even though they may approve you for the full rent, 3,000 minus the $250 towards the utilities, so your rent that you're going to receive is 3,000 minus 250. So you're going to get $2,750 in rent. A lot of times people don't realize that there's an offset for utilities as to what they actually
Yeah, I
collect.
mean, like it's a difference between a single family versus multifamily.
Right.
In multifamily case, you might be paying for water, you might be paying for the gas, the heat, and then tenant might be only paying the electricity part of it. In single family, generally the way we do, all the tenant is paying for all the utilities and all the charges. So that's why that form kind of spells out who's paying what, and based on that, they will say, okay, they will pay $50 towards the electricity to the tenant, and rest of the money goes to owner.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are worksheets too. There are worksheets for per square feet, how much they're going to charge for each utility, for the gas, for the heat. On the website, on most of the county websites, there are worksheets. So you can work out that details. So you know exactly how much you're going to get.
So you're going to fill out that packet. You're going to basically submit it back. Once you submit it, at that point, they're going to order an inspection, right? And this is where I can't stand this BS, because sometimes it can take a little bit longer for them to go out and inspect the house. This is the one part about the housing choice voucher I do not like, right? I mean, it just pisses me off because it takes, understand it's a bigger, especially in bigger counties, Cook County type of thing, it's going to take a longer thing, right? I mean, that's just how it is. Like it, don't like it, that's just how it works, right? And then let's just say they go to the property. There are certain safety things they're looking for. Windows, this, that, certain screens, and most of it is all based around the safety factors in the property. If the property is older, that's okay. That's not a problem, but the safety factors have to meet their criteria: smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, those types of things. And at that point, they're going to say, okay, you're good to go. Now, you're going to go ahead and be able to get the tenant in there. They're obviously going to make you a proposal in terms of the rent, and then you don't have to accept it.
Yeah.
You can deny it if you are not happy with the number. That's totally fine. But then you have to tell them yes or no. Then they're going to
Or
basically.
you can negotiate too.
Or you can negotiate.
Yeah, sometimes it is too low, and then you think it's not right. Then you can send them more comparables, and then it has, like, we have successfully done few negotiations where they actually accepted what we are saying is the right number, because sometimes they it's all based on inspection and everything. They sometimes miss the areas, maybe sometimes a bedroom or sometimes a bathroom or something. So you can always go back and negotiate that number to get what you want.
Right. So, and then at that point, they're going to basically say, okay, you're going to have your lease. The lease gets signed by you. The lease gets signed by, does the housing sign the lease, or does the tenant sign the
Once
lease?
both sign, once they approve it, then they come, like we generally do the normal, the tenant comes in, then we do the lease, and the tenant takes that lease to them. They stamp it actually, or put
Okay.
some sort of a stamp on it, and then it becomes and then that exact same amount is in your contract.
Right.
So that the lease matches the contract,
Yeah.
and contract is what you sign also.
Okay. And then at that point, they're going to start basically sending the ACH payments.
Yeah.
Now, in Chicago, a lot of people don't take a deposit in the, what about for suburbs? Do you take a deposit in terms of rent deposit?
Yes, like I said, we have the same process. So if
Okay.
you're taking the deposit from the market tenant, we are taking deposit from the housing tenant too.
Okay.
So in some Chicago areas, which is the trend is to take like last month payment or first month, or a moving fee or something. So it's different per county, but like I said, it just has to be same as your normal market tenants. So even housing also, we expect them to give us the deposit.
Okay, got it. So it's basically remains the same. So you're going to take a deposit in the outside Chicago, in the Cook counties or in other counties.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the process works. Then they set up the ACH, and then the ACH, once it starts, it hits your account every single month.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the process goes. It's a little bit tedious, but for the right areas with the right properties, it can be something that can be really another great choice for you as a landlord. So I just
and
wanted
it becomes easier too, because once you get your first property, you get a vendor number, you get like login. So now all your information is already there.
Yeah.
So if you have another property which you want to add on to it, then it becomes easier. Now it's just the inspection and you're done. because everything else is already they have.
They have everything is approved already. Yeah. So if you're buying another property, maybe put it in the same company, because if you have another company, then the whole process is going to start
Right.
again in a new company. So that's something to be mindful of when you're doing this, and as you kind of scale with that business, especially if you're going to do business with a lot of housing choice voucher participants. So hopefully that helps. That was something that was asked, and Rahul is the one who manages that portfolio. So that's why I thought he'd be the right person rather than me, since I don't manage it on an everyday basis. Having said that, thank you very much for joining us. It's Friday, so hope everybody has a safe, fun weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday again. Please share and share it with your friends, family, and other people that are interested in real estate investing. And guys, now till all the way to February, remember, no vacations except a couple days for Christmas and 1 day for New Year, because now is the time to double down and buy properties. Having said that, thanks so much, Rahul. Thank you.